candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Abeg Vex podcast.
Hello, good day, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. Today I have with me Wendy Alexander. Wendy, welcome.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So Wendy is here to talk about a topic that keeps most people up at night, all right? And that is our careers. I'm of a certain age where people struggle with their careers, questioning whether they made the right choice and whether to continue or pivot. So Wendy is an expert in this area, and I'm very happy to be talking to her today. So I have personal questions. I have questions that I know some of my colleagues have asked. So it will be great to have your expertise and share your knowledge, right? So thank you, Wendy.
Happy to. I'm happy to share my knowledge.
Beautiful. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. And then, at the end of that, can you please tell us, in your experience, what is the number one factor that causes people to go into this dilemma of, second guessing themselves or their careers?
All right. So firstly, a bit about myself. I was born and raised in Cape Town in South Africa. So I'm also from Africa.
Whoa.
And migrated to Australia at close to age 21. I think I was a month or 2 months shy of my 21st birthday when we came here.
Right.
So I've seen incredible stuff living in apartheid South Africa as a woman of color. What that did was obviously build resilience, because living in an environment where there's many cards stacked against you, because apartheid was all about segregation, all about opportunities for only one group of people, right? So we were classified as, there was the white population, there was the colored population, which is mine because I'm of mixed race,
right,
and then the black population. So I think from a young age, there was a lot of resilience built, and my father instilled in all of his kids that we needed to work hard, make sure we got an education, because opportunities were going to be less for us, right? And so I suppose I learned that mindset from a young age that, I had to work twice as hard to get ahead. And then we migrate to Australia, and I had 1 year of university at the University of Cape Town, and then we migrated here, and I finished my university degree here in Australia. And then I went and fell in love. And that was a good and a bad thing. Good for the first few years, and then turned into a nightmare relationship. So I ended up at 4 months pregnant, being deserted by my daughter's father, and I had to start again. And that was really, this ties into the career journey, because it was coming out of maternity leave and losing everything I'd worked hard for, because that relationship was had an awful split. He walked away from all the responsibility, and I was left with the financial burden. The house sold at a loss, so there was a massive debt. So I started over. But so it was messy, and it was what I call the rock bottom time of my life. But it also made me realize that, I had a baby, an infant child, and I had to figure it out. So that was the motivation for me to then go, I need to create a better job. I, at the time, did all my maths, did my sums, calculated that to get that debt paid off that I had, I needed to earn at least $20,000 more a year. And I was like, how in the world am I going to jump from where I was to the next level? So one of the things I did do was put myself in counseling. I needed to get counseling to heal from that trauma, because it was a traumatic breakup. And the other thing I did was, I'm like, how can I figure out how to earn more money? So I started to befriend recruiters and hiring people in the corporations that I was working at, and said, I'm going to pick these people's brains, because they know the pathway for me. I don't know what I'm supposed to put on my resume. How am I supposed to elevate myself to be able to jump, 20 grand in my income? Because usually you get $5,000 increases or 5% increase, but you don't get that massive increase. But I was like, I need to do something. So that was the journey for me. I actually started to network with recruiters, with hiring people, would take them, the little money I had spare, I would use to take them out for coffees and pick their brains. And then the other side of that was the writing side, was I've always written. So even when I was growing up in South Africa, if I was struggling, I used to process my emotions through writing. So it was always journaling, always writing. So I very quickly became good with words and was known in my circles as a wordsmith. And so I used that talent. I used the wordsmith talent to start rewriting my resumes. And so between developing the knack to write resumes in the way that hiring people wanted to see them, which was information given to me by these people I was having coffees with, I ended up developing a system. And I literally started testing out the system. So obviously the first few times I sent off resumes was trying to get interviews to land these better jobs. You get a lot of rejection. And I did get quite a bit of rejection, but I just continued to refine and refine and refine and refine. Test the market. And then probably within 6 or 7 months, I can't remember the right time, but it was less than 12 months. I landed a job from one of the resumes, I landed an interview from one of the resumes I'd sent. So I just tested it out and sent it again to other companies and started to get the hits on the interviews. And I was like, okay, I have got a resume that's working. And one of the roles I ended up interviewing for, and there again, I spoke with recruiters, hiring people, got them to practice with me, asked for their help. And here's a key message for a lot of people is ask for help. So many people don't. They have these dreams or they have these ideas of wanting to make change, but then they try to go it alone, And so I asked for help, and some people were amazing. They gave me a lot of time. But then there were some coaches that I met, and I knew, at the time I couldn't afford them. So I would ask them what their fees were, and I would say, how long does that fee remain at that particular number? And they would say, for 12 months. So I would start saving. And I would get in sometimes just on the 12th month or the 11th month, but I would then go to the coach, pay the fee, and actually get the coaching. So sometimes people say, I get people say that to me too when they come to work with me. They go, well, I can't afford the fees. And I'm like, well, what can you do to afford? What do you need to adjust? And then I give the examples of what I had to adjust. So I had to, I'm a lover of movies, I'm a foodie, all of those things. And I just had to cut all those things out. And I found with just cutting out certain things, I very quickly was able to save the money that I needed for a particular coach if I wanted to work with a particular coach. And that was really the start of the transformation, because I ended up getting that job and landed a $50,000 increase rather than 20. So I sort of overshot the mark, and that was the start. I literally then, from that time onwards, and my daughter was very young then, she was an infant, transformed our lives, because I went from strength to strength in the career, and I applied the same system every single time I wanted to go for a bigger promotion or wanted to go for a bigger company, a more reputable company, or a company that was going to pay more. I applied my systems. And then the people around me started to see that I'd come from rock bottom financially and emotionally, because it was quite an emotionally traumatic time, that time when our relationship ended. People came to me. They started asking for help. Friends, family, colleagues started asking for help. And before I knew it, I had a side business helping other people with resumes, with LinkedIn profiles, with interview coaching, all of these things. But it was very much a side business for a lot of the time, because I was in corporate for 23 years. So I worked the corporate job, which very quickly became a high-powered job, and coaching people on the side. So I had 2 jobs, a side hustle and my actual corporate job. And that's really the start of the journey for me. This is the start of the journey. And to your point about where people start when they want to make a change, when they're dissatisfied in their career. So a lot of people get dissatisfied. Some people get dissatisfied early in their career. They're in a job for 5-10 years and they go, this is not me. I'm not using my natural talents. I'm bored. I hate my company. I hate my boss, all of these type of things. But most people get to dissatisfaction when they at that midlife stage. And for women, it often comes with menopause.
Oh, menopause.
It comes with all these bodily changes, hormonal changes. Our tolerance for rubbish is reduced significantly during that time.
Yes.
And so if you're at the office, you are going to, your body's going through the change. You suffer. Some women, in my case, I had brain fog. There were so many things, so many symptoms I had when I was going through it. And you just go, you know what? I don't want the stress of a corporate job or a job I hate on my shoulders as well. And so that's often when a lot of women make the change. Many women make the change, but also men. I work with men as well. I work a lot with women because that's my heart work, because I've been through the difficult time of menopause and I know what that's like. But I also work with some men who, they've been in the job for years. They're bored to tears. They don't really like it anymore. The kids are grown. They've paid all the school fees and they want to do something different. And so one of the first places I start with people is a process that I call mining your story. And I actually have that free resource on my website.
Nice.
Where I take people through going through the patterns of their life, because our patterns show us something about where we need to go. So sometimes you have a pattern. In my case, for example, if I give an example of how to identify your patterns, one of my patterns was always writing through difficult times. So writing and the written word was something that I automatically found myself gravitating towards, right? So I knew that writing was something that brought me joy. When I was really young, when I first developed that love of words, it was because my dad was reading Shakespeare and novels and things like that to me. And I said to him, I want to be that. Whatever that is that produces these words in these stories, that's what I want to be. And I was only 6 years old. I was young. But it never shifted. The love of the written word never shifted. And so from wanting to be a novelist at age 6, and obviously you're told along the way, one of the things I was told was that writing will never make you money, right? So you get dreams smacked out of you really quickly.
Right. Right. They never made J.K. Rowling because she's made millions.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I love her. I love the Harry Potter series. I love it for the fact that she stuck with it. That she stuck with it through all the rejection.
Yes.
And that she knew it was what she was supposed to do. She did a lot of other things along the way to make money, but stuck with the written, with her passion for writing. And so that's what I try and identify with people that I work with, is like, what is the thread? Because there's always a thread or 2 or 3 threads that weave its way through your life. Stuff that people come to you for advice, that you automatically are able to give advice on, stuff that you have a natural talent for, right? And these things are all clues in that map of mining your story. And I call it mining your story because what we do is we dig through your story for your gold nuggets, because everyone's got the gold nuggets. A lot of them, people just don't know it. Once we learn to identify the gold nuggets, then I help the people I work with shape it up into saleable commodities. Okay, what is it about your talent that we can package up and sell? And it all comes back to a lot of transferable skills. So we're looking at leadership skills, at collaboration skills, at building people. Like some people have a natural ability to build other people up. So they belong in companies where that type of leadership is required. You don't necessarily have to have full on job specific skills, but if you've got that natural leadership skills, that natural ability to uplift people, a great way of listening to people and getting the best out of them, then you belong in the corporations that thrive in that space and that are looking for those type of people. When I was in corporate, I was in technology and project management, but I'm not a techie at all. I hate technology. I'm very bad with technology.
So
but
how
I
did you
knew
get in?
so I just applied one day for a role. It was a project management role, and it was a trainee project management role. So I was like, okay, that means they're going to train me. But I did have leadership qualities in help desk support, in customer service, in the banking industry, and all of that. And when I was interviewing, I kept zoning in on that ability to lead people, even though I didn't have the required skills. But also I kept reminding them that they'd advertised the role as a trainee project management. So my expectation was that I was going to be trained in the role. And maybe it was being confident like that, or being empowered and challenging the interviewers as well. They ended up giving me the job. And that's actually where I started. And I got a lot of my PM training on the job, But one of the things the managers or the bosses noticed really early was that I did have an ability to get the best out of people. So I ended up being put in leadership roles, and I just had all the subject matter experts, like the techie gurus around me. So I was able to translate. And that was the other thing, being able to translate tech language into layperson's language. That's where my written skill came in. And my bosses and my managers and CEOs saw that I had an ability to communicate and translate difficult terms into simple terms. So in the end, I was doing a lot of writing in corporate, which I loved because I was getting to use my words, and I was leading people. And all the technology and the projects that we were delivering, that was being delivered by the experts. I was coordinating them and managing them, but they were the ones with the actual expertise. And this is where I try and encourage people to understand that you don't have to have all of the skills. But if you know how to lead people, you know how to get the best out of people, then you can move into those roles and leave the developers, the software developers and the testers and the analysts to do what they do best. Because they're usually people that don't like all that people management stuff. They like to sit in their corner.
They're not good at it.
No, they're not.
They just don't have people skills. I've seen that a lot. Anybody on dev, they're just not people. Give them a computer system, they'll work magic. But when it comes to managing people, dealing with people, talking to people, it's just not an area that is natural for them.
That's right. So you end up working for people like me and you, that like managing people,
right.
That like leading people, and that also have, even if I don't understand a concept, I know that I can hear someone, and I often will say to them, okay, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Mm.
And then the moment they start explaining to me in those simple terms, I can then translate it for the rest of the company or the rest of the team. So I often use that phrase to people, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old, or talk to me like I'm an 8-year-old. And that immediately tells them they have to get rid of all the techie jargon, and they have to speak to me in a language that is simple. And most of them love it. They may not be persons, but they love to be able to explain their concepts in a way that can be understood. And so,
it goes for, sorry to interrupt you. It goes for everything.
Problem.
If you're passionate about something, there's just something about, sharing your passion with somebody, right? What you just said, talk to me as a 5-year-old. I think a lot of us sometimes get lost in the excitement of what we do, that we don't think about the other person, even in healthcare, right? When you're doing patient education, what I teach my students is that Think of your patient. It doesn't matter if your patient is a lawyer, a fellow doctor. They may not be an expert in this area of healthcare. Talk to them like you're talking to a fifth grader, right?
Yes.
Explain things to them if you want them to understand and follow your instruction. So I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and look at it, and it comes back to even the work that we do.
Right.
You need to speak to people in a way that they can relate. There's lots of different career concepts, but none of those make sense to people. People just want to know, how do I get someone to pay attention to my resume? How do I get someone to offer me an interview? So you've got to speak in the clues. One of the biggest clues to speak in the language of the company that you potentially want the job from is to look at the job ad. It's all there, but people overlook that. They're so busy trying to tell their experience instead of relating their experience to what the company wants. If you speak in the language of the person that you're trying to get something from, you're going to get that something. And these are some of the things that I teach a lot of my clients. It's like, okay, so if you go into a company like Microsoft, then you need to look at the job ad, look at what their mission is, pay particular attention to their mission, their goals, if they're doing social enterprise or anything like that, look at the job description, see the words that repeat itself throughout the job description, because wherever there's repetition, that is one of your first clues that that's important to that company, right? And then some of them spell it out. They actually say must have, and they give you the 5 bullet points or 6 bullet points. This is what you must have. This is what's desired. So there you can get away with it, but they desire that, but you don't necessarily have to have it. But if you've got something that relates to that desire, then you do that in your application. You make sure your resume is tailored for that, but also your cover letter, if you putting a cover letter with your application. And then you also use your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is such a big thing at the moment. And it is where many companies, if they don't want to pay commission fees to a recruiter, they go directly to LinkedIn. So you need to have a presence on LinkedIn. You need to be selling the brand of you as a candidate. And many people ignore LinkedIn. I can't tell you the number of people that don't use it and leverage it. So I have a big thing about teaching people how to use LinkedIn.
People think it's just like any other social media platform, and they feel like it's a waste of time to sell yourself on LinkedIn because a potential employer may see that as a negative of you spending too much time online. So what is the myth that you can dispel about that, especially with LinkedIn?
Okay, so with LinkedIn, you create your brand. It's not something you need to update all the time. But what you need to be on LinkedIn is active. Now, you can choose your times to be active. So if you don't want your employer breathing down your neck saying, I see you on LinkedIn, then you do it in your lunchtime or you do it after hours. And here's the thing that so many people don't realize. I built my LinkedIn profile 5 to 10 minutes a day at lunchtime when I was in corporate, right? So I started, and then even now when I've got my business, I don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. The thing with LinkedIn, as long as you're active, the algorithm's going to pick you up and raise you. So if you're active for only 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, fantastic. And one of the ways to get noticed by the algorithm in LinkedIn is to reach out and make connections. But you don't just hit connect. Some people see someone and they go connect. Well, the person doesn't know you. They're not going to accept your connection. Most times, they're not going to accept it because they don't know you. So I always say to people, go into a person's profile, have a read through their profile. That's where you spend your 10 minutes. You choose 5 people to connect to a day. That's all you need to do. Because if you're doing 5 a day for 10 minutes a day, the algorithm recognizes that you're active. And what happens if you do that over a period of time, LinkedIn starts to suggest people to you, because it starts to see who you're connecting to, right? So you only need to do 5 minutes. You look at the profile, you find common ground. So if you worked in the same company that person worked in, for example, some people put more than just professional information. They put some of their hobbies or their travel experience or something. If you find something like that, then that's what you use. So you click on the connect button within the person's profile, and it usually pops up that little note box, and you type a note. Do not just hit connect, because they're never going to accept you. So simple things I say to my clients, I say, so for example, if you see someone has traveled to Europe, and then you go, hey, I see you've traveled to Europe. What's your favorite country? So you connect with them on a personal level or even a professional level if they've worked at a similar company. Hey, I see you worked at Microsoft from this year to that year. What was it like? If you, for example, are interested in getting into Microsoft, you can say, what was it like? What is it really like to work? And you put really, so that people know you're kind of lighthearted about it. Most people accept your connections with a little message, because there's a personality connection that happens, and I always end off the thing with, I'd love to have you in my network. Very few people refuse that. Very few. I've had one or two that haven't bothered to respond. That's okay, but most people, when you connect on that connection basis, they accept. And then you start having conversations. If, for example, you've connected with someone who's in Microsoft and you want to potentially end up in Microsoft, you ask them questions. What's it like? What's the latest thing Microsoft's working on? What's the best thing about being at a company like that? And if you know the name of the CEO, what's the best thing about the CEO? Like things like that. And people love to share knowledge, and so I've never seen someone turn me away when I've asked questions, curious questions or intelligent questions. People just answer. And before you know it, you're building relationship. Right. Because this is the other key, is networking and building relationships with people. And back in my earlier days of corporate, we had to go to these meetups, these industry events, and it was like speed dating. You're talking to all the people that's there. You can't remember anybody's name by the end of it. Whereas now we have the LinkedIn platform. Now, I still encourage people to go to in-person industry events because I think it's important, but you don't have to. If you're an introvert and you don't want to, you don't have to. You can build your network on a platform that is free, right? I mean, some people pay premium. That's up to you if you want to. If you do the premium of LinkedIn, then you obviously you have access to a lot of learning. LinkedIn learning is covered under premium and that. So I encourage people to do that if they want to get skills, uplift their skills. But you don't have to do the premium. It's a free platform and you can build incredible connections. And it isn't just a social media platform anymore.
Right.
It is where people go for good candidates. They go and check you out on LinkedIn. And here's one of the things, a lot of the corporate companies I've worked with in the last years, the bosses, they tell me, if people can't be bothered really having a great presence on LinkedIn, rightly or wrongly, they interpret that as you don't care that much about your career.
Right.
So if you don't care that much about your career, why is someone going to hire you? Right?
Sure.
And so that's one of the myths. It is not just a social media platform. It is something that if you do it the right way, you can really leverage it to work in your favor.
I love it.
And so I encourage people, go there. Make it happen.
I think people fear rejection, and you mentioned it with your resume when you were sending your resume out, and not a lot of people can deal with rejection, especially from a trauma perspective. You said two things that really stood out. First, you going through what you were going through in life, you chose to get therapy first to heal the emotional trauma, right? And then you started working on yourself, rewriting your resume, sending those resumes out. And even with the rejection, you kept going. This is where I find a lot of women give up, because it's like, I don't really have time to deal with the rejection. They see a job posting, they absolutely loved it, so excited about it. And, they use the one-size-fit-all resume, CV, cover letter, right? And then you get 2 or 3 rejections, like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not interested. how do you help your clients, or what would you say to a potential client who is stuck in this cycle of fearing rejection or just having a hard time dealing with rejection, whether it's reaching out to make connections on LinkedIn or writing a good resume or CV to land that dream job or dream career? So what is your advice and coaching about, rejection?
So, look, rejection is a natural part of life. And it comes. You have it in every single industry. Doesn't matter which one we go into. There's a level of rejection that happens. Sometimes the rejection happens where you feel you're ready for a promotion, but the boss doesn't feel you're ready. So you go and you say, "I want an opportunity. I want a shot at this job that's coming up," and they go, "No, I don't think you're ready." And then you've got to work your way through that. I think the first thing to accept about rejection, that it's not always about you. In fact, a lot of the time, it's not always about you. It's about whatever's the most important goal on the company's trajectory.
Yes.
For example, so if your boss, you go to the boss and you say, "I would like an opportunity. I see this new role is coming up in the company. How do I get a promotion to that role?" And the boss might, because they know your work and they know you and they know what the expectation of that role is going to be, they may not feel that you're ready. And in many cases, that is someone doing you a favor. Because if you step into a role that you're not ready for, you're going to be exposed very quickly. And probably to more senior management, which means you're going to cut your opportunities the next time around, right? And so there's a level of self-awareness that has to happen, number one. But to get support, it is why I recommend to people either find a coach to work with, because the coach is always going to hold you accountable to your game. So if you say, when people come to me and they tell me, "I want this next role, I want this next level of income," I don't allow them to get away with saying, "I can't handle rejection anymore." It's like, we knew this was coming. I prepare them right from the start. We're going to be prepared to be rejected. We may not get all the interviews that we want. We may go and interview for 5 jobs and get no offers. Or we may go interview for 5 jobs and get 3 offers. Now we have to work through which one's the best one, right? Because it's always little challenges that you've got to work through when you're going through anything in life, including your career growth. And so it's important to have an accountability partner. Now, if you don't feel ready for or can't afford a career coach, then find a good friend or a partner or a colleague. But you need to be very clear about what you need from them. And you need to have the conversation. Probably one of your first conversations needs to be, "Don't let me excuse myself from my success." So that's the promise. You make it's a golden handshake that happens between you and whoever you choose to be your accountability partner.
Right.
Because you are going to hit the difficult times. And the accountability partner is there to listen to you, have that meltdown moment, because we're going to have them. But then their job, because you've had the golden handshake between the two of you of the promise, the next step is to get you out of that and go, "No, I know you're feeling rejected. We're going to have some ice cream. We're going to the movies.
I love
but
it.
from tomorrow onwards, next company. That's it. We're going to adapt the cover letter. We're going to adapt whatever, and we're going to keep going. We are not going to stop until we get what we want." Because so many people give up just a meter or 2 away from the pot of gold. That's often when people give up. And I know that if I had given up, I wouldn't have the life that I then ended up living. When I was in corporate and running my business part-time, I traveled the world with my daughter. It was the 2 of us for a long time. We traveled all over the world, and I loved it. I negotiated my contract so that I only worked 9 to 10 months of the year. I traveled for 8 to 10 weeks every year because I love traveling. But, when you start to develop in that career space and you become reliable and you deliver great results, you're able to negotiate better each time. And I always said to the people when I interviewed with them, they knew my daughter was a priority. I had to have my time with her. And I would say to them things like, and this is where you need to be bold and courageous. I would say to them, I'm interviewing you as much as you interviewing me. And I need to know that I can have the balance of a good career, but also be a good mother. And if you can't do that, if you need me in the office all of the time and I'm working 10-hour days, that's not going to work for the mother side of my life. So I was very upfront. What I found is that when you ask, we go back to the asking.
Right.
When you ask and you ask with conviction and confidence, it's very rare that you don't get what you want. Because every contract I worked in the 23 years that I worked in corporate was on my terms. I worked a couple of days from home when working from home wasn't even a thing. Now it's a thing. Now you even, this is the thing. People are in even better times now, right? They can ask for working from home. They can ask for hybrid, all of those type of things, right? Back in my day, it wasn't a thing, but it was very important to me. But the thing that comes with that to remember is if you ask for something, like I asked to be able to work from home, you must deliver. If you don't deliver, you will quickly destroy your own reputation, and then you'll never get what you want. And so when I got the bosses to agree for me to like when I first went back to work after my daughter was born, I said, I'm only coming into the office 1 day a week. I'm going to do all my meetings on that day with the various people I had to meet with. And then I'm working from home. They agreed to it. And I over-delivered. I made sure, and I negotiated. I said, let's put it on trial for 3 months. Because I knew that I could nail it in 3 months. Like you have to give yourself the time and the space to get adapted and to get people adapted to how you work and all that. So I did it and I over-delivered. So he was happy for me to continue. So the next 3 years that I was at that company, that's how I worked. 1 day in the office, 4 from home. And I was able to be with my daughter. My parents would sometimes come and take her out and help out. And she had grandma and grandpa time. But I was able to work on my terms. And that's how I worked my entire corporate life. Very much negotiating the terms that I wanted. And this is what I try and teach people to do, is to ask for what you want, but be in negotiation about it. So you need to give something in order to get something. And as long as there's this mutual giving happening and giving and receiving between the two parties, you're going to set yourself up for success. And people start to trust you and they go, this person is a person of their word. What they say they're going to do, they do. And if you're unable to do it, then we're back to the very simple old communication skills. You communicate. If my daughter got sick one time when she was very young and she was in hospital for a week. So I got on the phone to my boss and I said, look, I'm not going to be in the office for the next 7 days. My kid is in isolation in hospital because she got really bad salmonella poisoning and was sick. And obviously they kept us in an isolated room. But because she was a young baby, she was, probably about 18 months old. They had to watch her very carefully that she didn't get dehydrated and all that. So I'm in the hospital. And I think the first 3 days, I just said to him, I'm not working, I'm not doing anything. But then as she settled down, I was really there to just keep an eye on her. So I would sit near her hospital bed and be on my laptop. And so they realized that I was always going to be finding a way to cooperate and to get things done, even when my daughter was sick. The first 3 days, no, because she was too ill and I was too terrified and I couldn't concentrate or anything like that. But once she came through the worst of it and they were just sort of monitoring her and I was there to be the comfort, I had a little bed next to her little bed. They were fine. My workplace was fine with me working from where I needed to work from. And I was still delivering at the end of the day, as long as you keep delivering. And if you challenged with delivery because of circumstances, like, for example, my daughter being ill, I just simply communicated. People aren't monsters and they're always going to meet you where they need to meet you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think trauma actually either scares people or makes them hesitant to ask, maybe a past experience. Which brings me to my next question, and is something that you've actually talked about, is that be bold enough to ask, be bold enough to negotiate, right? Be bold enough to speak up. And given that majority of your clients are women, and I think you can either agree or disagree, women are very hesitant to, be emboldened and empowered to ask for accommodation or ask what they really want, because the corporate world is very male dominated, right?
Yes.
So why would I risk as a woman getting a career of my dream once my resume has been accepted? I've had the first interview, the second interview. At this point, we are at a place of making an offer. To risk losing this to a guy who maybe has a wife, and the wife is the primary caregiver for the children. He doesn't have to worry about, being a dad as much, or going to the doctor's appointment and the school meetings and all of those things. Why would I risk that? And if I asked you this question as your client, like, I'm scared to ask because, it could just, that position could be given to the next person waiting, and it could be a man that doesn't have the responsibilities that I have as a mom. So what would
Yeah.
your support of me be?
Well, one of the things I've been working with women in the workplace to try and embolden them, especially around the area of menopause, right? Because women get to midlife, and what I've seen, I don't think we're dealing with the same type of man that we were maybe dealing with 20, 30 years ago, right? A lot of men are quite aware of what's going on. They have wives, partners that are educating them.
Okay.
And many of them, certainly my partner is quite high up in corporate, and he hires. And what he said to me, that's what kind of made me also start looking at the work. He said to me, I'm losing a lot of female talent at midlife because women, he says, what's going on? And I said, menopause is going on. He's like, what do you mean? And I said, women, we have the ability to multitask, to do so many different things, and we do it for most of our lives. We are caregiver to everybody, our partners, our children, our community, our parents, our siblings.
Yes.
That's what we do. And I said, we stay on that automatic pilot for a long time. And it's usually because we're quite strong within our minds and our bodies. I said, but often when women get to menopause, that's when the body starts to betray them a little bit. Or they feel, I certainly felt like mine had betrayed me. It's like, what happened? Why is this brain not working properly? Why is it so foggy? Why aren't I sleeping anymore?
Right.
But what comes with that is also the realization that we've been low on our caregiving lists, or not at all on our caregiving lists, right? And so that's one of the first things that I try and change the mindset of women, is that you need to be on the caregiving list, and you need to start pushing yourself up that list, right? And then it's about a confidence thing. So the very similar way to the way I coach people to have confidence in interviews, that's what I do with women. And it's not a quick process, but it doesn't have to be an extremely long process either.
Okay.
Because what I find always works, the trick that always works, is you need to become an advocate. If you're struggling with the idea of becoming an advocate for yourself in the workplace, what about your daughters? What about your sons? Because it's not just for the daughters, it's about teaching your sons to be supportive of women, to be in partnership with women. So it's literally about advocating for the next generation. And you always hit the soft spot for women, because here's the thing, women will fight for their kids. We will lift up a car if our kid is trapped under a car.
Yes.
So sometimes I've found that relating it to that child that the woman is protective of, whether it's a son or a daughter, it gives them a level of strength.
Right.
And they do go. And also I think a lot of women are now realizing that we're living in a time where What we need to do is make allies of men. Because you see this word toxic masculinity thrown around everywhere, but you're not going to create an ally out of a man if you're calling him toxic, right? You need to educate him. Right. This is what I've done with the people I've worked with and with the ladies that I help them find their voices in corporate. It's go and make the ally of the man, because here's the thing that's true for me, and I know it's true for lots of other women. The people that helped me grow my career were all men. There was not one woman who elevated me. I, in fact, found obstacles with some women.
That is very true. That was going to be my next question, but please finish.
So I've seen the obstacles come sometimes from women. I don't know. There's a level of insecurity sometimes that we carry, and then we end up putting other women down, or we end up blocking the pathways of other women, right? But I've not seen that in the men, right? When I've become an ally with men, and one of the ways to become allies with men is to be solutions driven, because men are solution driven. So if you've got a problem, so for example, if you're a midlife woman and you struggling with certain things, like you might get extreme fatigue at 3:00 in the afternoon. You're fine in the morning, but then you get hit with this menopausal fatigue, which happens. So you can go to an HR person, man or female, or even your boss, male or female, and you say, listen, these are some of the things that I'm experiencing and other women are experiencing. What could we do to help women just have some rest at that mark, at the 2:30 or 3:00 mark? Now, I've seen companies do that in Australia, where they set up breakout rooms. Some of them even have a bed in it, and you can go and have your 30-minute nap or something. It's a small thing, but just the fact that someone is willing to take that on, willing to take that suggestion on, gives someone the idea that they're being supported. Also create programs for women to educate women about balancing work time, knowing when they're at their best and knowing when they're starting to get tired, but then also programs to educate men. Because it is embarrassing. I remember when I was in meetings, if a hot flash came along, I'd be dripping with sweat. And I'd have to dash out. That's right. And so I think when we shy away from conversations and we don't have it and we start having preconceived ideas that they're not going to understand or that I'm going to lose my job if I open up the conversation, you'll never have the conversation and we'll never break down those barriers. Someone has to be brave.
Yes.
Someone, and if you're not going to do it for yourself, as I say, do it for the ones coming behind you, your daughter, your son.
Yes, absolutely. Do it for somebody. Somebody may be watching you without knowing. And our children have a knack of watching our actions and not our words, right?
Correct.
So when I speak up for myself, my daughters are watching, right? And they think sometimes like, I saw mommy do that. I'm like, yeah, you go girl.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So, I love this conversation. Let's talk about women. Let's talk about women. Let's talk about us. In my experience, I have had a few not so great experiences with women leaders who either are very clique-minded, okay, and it clouds the effectiveness of a great worker, or you mentioned earlier insecurities, whatever it could be, okay, whether it's education or recognition or work ethic or just generally being likable, right?
Yes.
Generally just being a likable individual. They become these gatekeepers, they become this hindrance, or for lack of a better word, henchmen, right? To a woman progressing in their career. What advice would you have for both the women who may feel it's their sole responsibility to hinder somebody else's growth, or the person who experiences this? So how should women navigate that, especially in the corporate world? Because not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, start your business. Some people just love the idea of going in and, putting in their expertise and doing work, right? So how do we navigate this as women to, one, be supportive of each other, and two, navigate these behaviors if we find it in a corporate place or the corporate space?
Okay, so if you encounter a bullying kind of behavior,
Right.
from male or female, then
Right.
you go through your channels. So you need to, I would take it up with the person first. Like, you always give someone an opportunity to change their behavior, right? Because going to HR or going to the next level up management is going to make that relationship worse. So always give someone, and yeah, again, it's going to require a level of boldness, a level of courage to go and have the conversation and say, and it's important not to be accusatory, right? But to actually approach them with potentially a message, something like, I'm noticing that you appear to be having a go at me all the time. And I'm wondering if there's something that I've done that's causing this, or if there's some area that I need to uplift to get better, for us to get past this obstacle, because we're women in the workforce and we have quite a number of things stacked against us already. So we may as well go forward supporting one another. How can I support you in whatever it is you need done that you don't think I'm doing? Right? So often that is a conversation that goes quite well, because a lot of the time an insecure woman isn't really recognizing that she's paying out on another woman, right? But when it's brought to her attention, a self-aware leader is going to take that on board and do something about it. Some people aren't that way, and they just mean-spirited in nature.
Dark.
And I'm telling you, if you encounter that, then you have to be the person that's powerful enough to set a boundary, because you'll never be respected if you don't set a boundary. And if setting a boundary means you have to go above that person's head, if you see that they're not changing their behavior, then that's what you do, and sometimes you have to get HR involved. Human resources representative has to come and mediate, Now, that often does leave a darkness over the working relationship for a while, but you still need to show your strength and that you aren't going to be someone that's going to be bullied by anyone, male or female, and that you have boundaries and that you have respect for yourself and that you value yourself, because people only ultimately value and respect you when you do that for yourself. And that comes with, hold up, here's my boundary, and I'm not going to allow you to cross it. I mean, obviously, if the thing, it remains, if it's not tenuous anymore, then my recommendation is get out of there, because you don't want your mental health to be affected.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, because a lot of careers, or a lot of jobs, not careers, a lot of jobs are not worth your mental health or your health in general, right?
Correct.
And some of the times, like, you can see the writing on the wall. Somebody said to me, in a very toxic place that I worked, and she said to me, the one thing about you is that, it doesn't matter what we say, you are good with reading between the lines. Even between the lines. I said, yes. And when you notice, this is for everybody listening, when you're not getting anywhere, when people are connected deeper than the surface, right? When the bully is being backed. If you feel that way, please, it's okay. Even if that was your dream job, even if this was your dream career, please get out. Your family loves you. Your friends love you. We want you to have longevity. We want your mental health to be intact. Please, please, please listen to Wendy. Wendy doesn't move it. Get out.
Yeah, get out. And remember that if you're being bullied in any company, that is not your dream job.
Absolutely.
Even if you think it is, even if it's a prestigious company, even if it's Google or any of these prestigious companies, if you're being bullied, that is not your dream company. That is not your dream job. Because your dream job is where you are supported and you're encouraged to grow.
Yes.
And develop. That's the dream job. And we don't get full work-life balance. That doesn't actually exist. People talk about work-life balance all the time, but it doesn't. But you get a reasonable balance.
Yes.
You know when you're required to be there 10 hours a day because you're delivering a project that's got a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And you know when there's leeway for you to have time off because it's a quiet time. So it's a case of balancing everything out in the end. But you're never going to get perfect work-life balance. It doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
Give or take. It becomes a give or take. If you're in a give or take environment where sometimes you've got to work longer hours, but then other times you can take some time off to be with the family, well, that's a great culture. That's a great work culture.
It is. It is. And a great company will actually recognize when you go that extra step to get things done in time. And you will be, it doesn't have to be a tangible appreciation, just a thank you, an email, great job on this. It goes along. I love it. So being that we're both African women, okay, I want to touch on this a little bit because culturally, as women, we don't have the same, I would say, access in the corporate world. If we want to talk about the African continent, it has changed a lot, okay? It has, we're moving in the right direction. For a young lady listening to you, Wendy, and she's up and coming in her career, she's making a name for herself, she's being emboldened, she's great at what she does, but she still is concerned about either being blocked by another woman who may be in a higher position, or concerned that her male manager may not, or a man manager may not take her needs into consideration. What would you say to that young lady looking to grow herself in a career and in the world?
So I always encourage people to identify places where the access is not as restricted, right? And sometimes people go to companies because of a name, right? The company's got a prestigious name or something, but that's not necessarily the right place for you. If you want to get your start and you want to earn your stripes and you want to hone your working muscles, sometimes you need to identify maybe a mid-sized company or even a smaller company where your skills and talents are going to be appreciated and you're not going to be lost in the usual culture. And when I say usual, I mean lots of opportunities go to a certain group of people, whether they're male, whether they're white, whether they whatever, right?
Yes.
We in the end have to take charge of our own career and life. I mean, because when I entered corporate in Australia,
right,
for many years, I was the only female sitting in the meeting rooms.
Wow.
And I was the only female of color as well.
Wow.
Right? But what I always did, and it goes back to the delivery, I let my work speak for itself, always. So I always made sure that I went above and beyond. And yeah, it sucks that we sometimes have to. But if you want to be recognized and you want the meritocracy to be working in your favor, then you need to be earning that merit. Right? I always encourage, and I say this to my daughter as well, because obviously she's a young African woman coming up in the world. And I say to her, don't ever feel like you owed something. And don't ever walk into a workplace or any place feeling like you're a victim. Never stand in that space of victimhood. Stand in a space of power. Show them who you are. Show them who you are as a strong woman,
right,
as a competent woman, as a curious woman, because curiosity is an incredible thing. I've seen it work miracles in workplaces.
Yes.
Someone just being curious about how a company works, how people work, wanting to know more, and showing that. People notice that. They notice that. And those, in today's world, that is in fact what's being rewarded more than anything, is curiosity. People showing curiosity and wanting to learn and grow. And so you always need to be operating from the merit space rather than, yes, we, as African women, there's a history. There's a big history. There's a history of slavery. There's a history of apartheid for me. Right. All of those things, right? But don't let that define you.
Colonization for me, yeah.
Yeah, don't let it define you. Know who you are. You come from a line of warrior women. Never forget that. We come from warriors,
Yes,
right?
we do. Yes.
We come from the oldest civilizations
Right.
in the world.
Right.
Our music, our food, our culture has been here long before any others.
Mhm.
So be proud of that.
Yes. Yes.
And so I encourage people to leave any kind of victim mentality, because it will always hold you back.
It
It
will.
will always hold you back. Leave it behind you and go, what am I good at? What do I really want to do? Where can I do this to the best of my ability? And that might take a little bit of research and exploration on your part, but it's worth identifying your place in the world, or your places. Sometimes you work for more than one company throughout your career, but always move to the ones where you feel like you can contribute, like you can bring your culture, your heritage, your experience, your curiosity, and contribute something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go where you're celebrated. Go where you're celebrated. You can do this.
Exactly.
You got this. So, to wrap up this incredible conversation, you mentioned something earlier, and it stuck with me because I have these conversations with a lot of my colleagues in the nursing and also the medical, even medical doctors. I have this conversation with them, and even with people who have done well for themselves. They have all these accolades, their names are easily recognized. Whenever the conversation comes up about, like, you would really be great at this. It's like, you know what? I've always wanted to do that. It's like, why don't you do it? It's like, I don't know. I don't know if, anybody would take a chance, right? And you mentioned something, being confident that somebody wants to hear from you. What would you tell everybody who's listening, man, woman, child, listen, how do you have that confidence in being sellable, believing in your sellability, right?
It's like every muscle that gets built. It is not necessarily something we're born with, or in fact, I think kids are born confident. They're born open. They're not born with racist issues or anything like that, right? But it gets beaten into them. They see the environment around them and so on and so on. And so if you want to rebuild it, then like anything, it's like if you're going to the gym. If you decide you want to train because you want to be strong and healthy and you want to have reasonable six-pack or whatever, you're not going to do it by dreaming about it. You actually have to go to the gym. There is no getting around it, right? It's not about I'm going to sit here and think about the gym. It's about I actually have to get up and drive to the gym or walk to the gym and do my daily exercise or my every second day exercise. And it's the same with confidence. You need to practice. It's about, even if you're terrified to speak in a meeting at work, if you see something and you've got a valuable idea to contribute, then contribute that idea. If you don't have a valuable idea to contribute, but you have a question, don't be afraid to ask the question, because sometimes the valuable ideas come from the questioning. And it is a matter of putting yourself in situations where you're speaking up for yourself in big and small ways. And the more you do it, the more you build the muscle of confidence. Because I can tell you, when I started out in the career space, when I landed that big 50, I was battered in my confidence because I had lost a relationship. I'd lost a home. In my head, I was like, how did a smart, intelligent woman end up here? So confidence was in the toilet. But I was like, there again, there's always another motivation factor. For me, it was my daughter. I was like, I've got this young baby and she's a girl. And I need to show this little girl what strength looks like, what resilience looks like, what getting up from rock bottom looks like. Because I definitely didn't want that for her. And so sometimes it's just about connecting to a different motivating factor. Sometimes the motivating factor is outside of you. For me, it was my daughter, until I was able to build my own muscle. There's always a why. There's always a reason.
Right.
And you just need to identify yours.
So good. So good. And I cannot, words fail me. I cannot agree more, because a lot of the times because life is going to batter you. Life is life. Life is going to life regardless. And it often takes the extrinsic factor to motivate you to go, for what you're fully capable of. And a lot of those times, our children are just exactly those weapons that we need to say, you know what? I've got to get up and get this thing done. Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
look around you, whoever that is, can be your mother, your sister, your brother. Your children are a big factor, huge factor. Reach in for that strength outside, coupled with your inner strength. It does not happen overnight. Wendy said it, and she said it a few times, right? It does not happen overnight. So look for a mentor or career coach. So when it comes to career coaching, I know I said that was the last question, but wrapping it up with this one. I've gone through and worked with a lot of coaches on different fronts. And some coaches I've recognized absolutely this is the person for me because they spare time, they're knowledgeable, and they actually care. And the coaches that I'm like, okay, it was just about paying my fees. Got it. Okay, well, good. What advice would you have for somebody who is questioning whether a coach is right for them or not? How soon should they end that relationship and look for somebody else? Or what are the key factors to utilize in finding out if a coach is the right coach for you, right?
So, look, I agree with you. Your coach needs to be willing to give you time.
Right.
So one of the ways I get people to test me out is I always do like a 15 or 20-minute call for them. And I record it on Zoom and I send them. And I get them to send me their resume. So I do a live review of their resume. That's the first thing I do for people. I go, here's where you could improve it. Here's where I'm just seeing a whole lot of tasks and responsibility. What about your achievements? And I give people actual live information on how that resume can be uplifted. So I'm giving them my time. And then I give them ways of working with me. Like you don't have to take my comprehensive package because I can tell immediately what someone needs from me. Some people have got decent documents. They're going to land a couple of interviews, but they're not landing the jobs. So then they only need interview coaching with me. And I mean, sometimes I know my partner, he thinks I'm weird in this way because I will record, I sell like a 3-session interview coaching package and I record that on Zoom and I send it to my client. And my message with that is, you don't need to come back to me. We've done it in here. Go back to that. Right. Don't keep spending your money. Once you're trained in a certain space, go and implement what I've taught you. Because I'm not there to take people's money forever and a day. I'm there. My biggest aim is to get them a result.
Absolutely.
Once you've gotten the result and you've gotten those videos, you know what to do. You just need to apply it. Now, if you come back 4 or 5 years later, I've had some clients come back and they go, look, I'm going for a really big promotion now and I really feel like I need some practice. Well and good. Then I'm happy to do it with you.
Absolutely.
But seriously, you don't need to. You've already got it. I've already given it to you.
Right.
The other thing is you've got to know when it's crunch time to support your clients. And here's where you as potential clients, people looking for a coach, you also need to be able to identify that. So for me, crunch time for a client is when they land a job interview.
Right.
So whilst I work certain hours and I have restrictions on my hours and how available I am always available when a client has an interview. So I've been in Europe, for example, and a client has WhatsApped me and said, I have an interview in 3 days' time. I know you're traveling. I'm going, no problem. Let's work out the time. And sometimes it's been 2 a.m. in the morning for me and whatever time in Australia or in Hong Kong or in Singapore.
Right.
And I have done the coaching with them because why? If we don't get the interview nailed, they don't get the job offer. So that is crunch time. So there are times when the coach needs to be available to you. And for me, writing time is not a crunch time because we're putting your documents together. So as we're going back and forth via emails and we're getting on Zoom and we're fleshing out all your story and writing your LinkedIn, and that's not crunch time. But interview time is crunch time because you don't get to move that date. If the employer comes and says you're interviewing on Friday, we don't get to move the date.
Right.
So even if I'm overseas, I need to be working with you. And I make myself available. And you will know when you go and approach your coaches, you will know very quickly whether someone is available. And I don't just restrict people to the time that we've agreed on. Like I've had clients, we've done the interview coaching, we've done the practice, they're ready, they've had interviews, but then they get this curveball question. And they've sent it to me on WhatsApp. They go, I got this curveball question in an interview and I didn't know how to answer it.
Right.
I'll either get on the phone with them or I'll send them a quick answer. Here's how you answer it in case you get it in the next interview. So it's a relationship building. At the end of the day, you get your best results when you're in relationship and partnership with someone.
Absolutely.
I'm not a miracle worker, and I say to people off the bat, if you're coming to me because you think I'm going to create miracles with your career, I'm not a miracle worker. This is a partnership. That means I turn up for you,
right,
but you also turn up for me. If I set you homework or I set you a task, don't book your next session until you've completed that.
Absolutely.
Because it's all about helping you grow and develop, and importantly, both of us honoring our word to each other. That's the most important thing. My father taught me that when I was very young. The key to success is to do what you say you're going to do.
Love it. I love it. Yes. That so good. So good. Yeah. For people like you and I who have an expertise, it took years to build ourselves. It took a lot of education to build ourselves. It took a lot of healing to build ourselves. And I understand that for everybody who's been able to establish for themselves. But when I was in a learning curious stage, and I still am, because I learn and I'm still curious every single day. And I have heard this time and time again, and I've shared this frustration. Experts, the gurus of the world, some of them have this thing that is my price. If you cannot afford me, then, you're not meant to be my client, right? Without wiggle room of, okay, I'm going to give you a 10, 15, 20 minutes consultation so I could see where I can help you. You can also see if we can work together. And I'm also going to make this result reflective for you. So it is not like you have to basically suckle to me all the time. We will work together. I'll record it and you have this piece to refer to it. Like you said, if there's anything in that video, is there anything in that recording that comes up out of the blue, then we will set up time to talk. So it is very important for us to also support each other, right? So
yes.
Everybody, when you have your coach, you have your career mentors, right? Please make sure it is somebody that supports your need. It is very important because when you spend money and invest in coaching, if it does not meet half of the need that you had, it becomes a frustrating thing and it actually clouds your judgment or it clouds the benefit that you could possibly see in somebody else. So as much as you're getting a service, you're also interviewing the person. Just like Wendy said, everything she said, absolutely. Please, please, please. And Wendy, we're going to put your website and everything that is Wendy Alexander on the show notes of this podcast. Please feel free to interact. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple. We'll also be uploading a lot of the episodes on YouTube as well. So please follow, listen, reach out to Wendy. Wendy, is there any specific geographical location you work with, or it doesn't matter? Anybody around the world can work?
I work around the world. Most of my clients are from the Asia Pacific region because obviously that's where I'm located and time-wise it works. But I've worked with people in the US. I've worked with people in the UK, in Europe. My biggest clients come out of Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. So Singapore, Hong Kong, those parts of the world.
Great.
But I work with anybody. We just work the time out. Like sometimes it's early in the morning for me or it's in the evening for me. I adapt and adjust the time to how it needs to be.
I love it. So please, everybody who's listening, reach out, consult. Let's have a healthy career. Women, please believe in yourself. Stand up for what you believe. Speak up. A lot of young women are looking up to you. Speak up. Do what you say you're going to do. Show up. Be your best self. Be a result-driven individual. and everything else is going to fall. Okay. And if you're stressed out at that workplace, it is not your dream job. Wendy said it. I didn't say it.
That's right. It's not your dream job.
It's not. It's really not. So it doesn't matter how close it is to your house, the children's school. It's something else. Please. All right.
Yes.
Learn to see the signs and move. Wendy, it was so great talking to you.
You too.
We have hopefully another session planned, but I would love for the people to hear from you again. All right.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Wendy. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Abeg Vex podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.